So the last video you watched ended with Magellan. So again, I just wanted to make sure that everybody's got the information on Ferdinand Magellan. So you can see here that by the time he did get to the Philippines, unfortunately, he lost his life. His men, of course, continued on with the voyage, and they did make it back safely to Spain, which, of course, gave Magellan credit for circumnavigating the globe. First to do it, okay? Even though he technically didn't do it, the rest of his crew finished the trip for him, and so he did get credit in the history books. Now, this is the early 1500s in case you're needing a date for reference, okay? Again, I'm not going to give you exact dates for this, but early 1500s is when he did this. So this brings about something very important that's about to happen. If you've got Portugal, obviously doing their exploration, now you've got Spain exploring, there's obviously going to be some conflict. This is just a quick image of South America. So conflict will soon take place. This is on number 6, between the Spanish, which would be, of course, Spain, and the Portuguese, which is the country of Portugal. And it was just a matter of time before these two countries are both wanting land. And there's concern that possibly war could break out if this is not settled. So who do they go to? These are two very Catholic countries. They look to the Pope for answers and a solution. So the Pope at this time is Alexander VI, and he, of course, will settle the differences between the Spanish and the Portuguese by coming up with the Treaty of Tordesillas. So this is a well-known treaty of the time period that I need you to know the details in order to prevent war between Spain and Portugal. So what this treaty said was that the New World, which of course is these continents, North America, South America, this will eventually be called the New World, that land would be granted to Spain, except for Brazil, because remember, Portugal had already claimed Brazil. So to be fair to Brazil, the Pope says, you get to keep that land, but Spain gets the rest. And that's because we haven't gone over Columbus, but by the time this treaty was signed, Columbus had already done his exploration of a lot of this area, and the Spanish were not wanting to lose that land. So this was the fair way to do it. What the Pope did was basically take a map and draw an imaginary line that ends up being known as the line of demarcation that separates the land that Spain and Portugal had. So all the land east of that line of demarcation, so this is of course east to the right, would be for Portugal. And you could see here that includes Brazil. Brazil is this part of South America. And then all land west of the demarcation line would be Spain's. So this Treaty of Tordesillas will successfully prevent war, at least for now, between Spain and Portugal. Okay, so again, very important treaty. I'm hoping you're able to get all of that information written down. So I'm showing you the next page of the typed outline once you get finished with the Treaty of Tordesillas information. The last topic we need to go over for Roman numeral 2 is one of the overland trade routes, one of the oldest ones, known as the Silk Road. And once we finish that, we're moving on to Roman numeral 3. So the Silk Road is an ancient trade route, overland trade route, that was used for thousands of years. And you can see I've tried to give you a description of where you would find this overland route. It went across China, Arabia, which is part of the Middle East, and into Europe. And those who traveled carried the obvious silk, hence the name Silk Road. More than likely, this was the overland trade route that Marco Polo went from Italy to, of course, China. So this was very well traveled But as you can see, this route will be less used, so it will not be used as frequent as it once was because of the all water routes being discovered. So once those all water routes were discovered, you will see people abandoning or using less frequent these overland trade routes such as the Silk Road. So make sure you do know the reason behind why those overland routes will not be used as much once the all water routes were discovered. We talked about how dangerous these overland routes were, how long it took, how expensive it was, and the all water routes cut down on some of those problems. So we're about to begin section 3 of your typed outline that says monopoly broken. So before I go back to the PowerPoint, I want to remind you a couple things. First of all, do you remember before all the water routes were discovered? What were those two groups that had basically a monopoly, which means they controlled all the goods and services, and it's because all the trade routes went through their cities. Do y'all remember which two groups those were? Muslims and Italians. Hopefully you're answering that to yourself. So they had the monopoly until what country broke this monopoly and found that all water route over here to the Asian world. What country was that? Portugal. Okay, so remember, the Italian and Muslims, they obviously had the monopoly. And once the all water routes were discovered, that Italian Muslim monopoly on trade was broken thanks to the Portuguese. Portugal was the one that discovered the all water route first. So that is the first thing you have on your new outline, Roman numeral 3. Thanks to this all water route being discovered and the Italian Muslim monopoly being broken, the Eastern goods that the Portuguese and other Europeans took back with them, they were able to obviously they were able to get the goods for less money. Okay, it was less expensive because they don't have to go through the middleman anymore. They're not having to pay taxes on these goods now that the all water route has been discovered. So this is great news for the Europeans. It says here, as a result, the Atlantic nations became wealthy and the Italian and Muslims grew poor. I'm hoping y'all can make these connections and understand what's going on, okay? So again, the Italian, the Muslims, their monopoly's been broken. They're going to lose out on money, whereas the Atlantic nations, that means the countries that are along the Atlantic Ocean, Spain, Portugal, for example, they are going to become more wealthy, okay? So here are your examples of Atlantic nations that you can also put down. I would put that down probably underneath number 3. Portugal, England, and Spain, they are all becoming more wealthy, and these are what we call Atlantic nations. Now, let's talk about another group that enter the exploration world. They're known as the Dutch. Now, before I tell you anything about them, look at their location. The Dutch are in Holland. Holland is a part of the Netherlands. Okay, so if you're going, where in the world is this? The Netherlands is in the northern part of Europe. So in this area here is where the Netherlands are. So again, if you're talking about the people that live in Holland or the Netherlands, you refer to them as the Dutch. Okay, they are going to become a major sea power at this time, which means lots of ships. Specifically, they are going to have a fleet of ships for business and commerce, which is trade, known as the merchant marine. And at this time of history, the Dutch had the largest merchant marine of anyone. Okay, so again, understand what a merchant marine is. This is a naval fleet. So it's basically a fleet of Navy ships that are not used for battle. That's why it says they're not battleships. They're used for business and commerce, commerce meaning trade. So this is going to give, of course, the Dutch a big advantage in the world of trade, thanks to their merchant marine. So along with England, the Dutch, so the two together, England and the Dutch, which of course is the Netherlands or Holland, broke Portugal's Asian monopoly and formed what are called joint stock companies. Okay, I'll tell you more about what a joint stock company is, but let's understand that statement first. So obviously, the Portuguese had a monopoly over a lot of goods in the Asian world because they broke the Italian and Muslim monopoly and they got a hold of it. Now the English and the Dutch broke Portugal's monopoly and will form these joint stock companies. Two examples of joint stock companies: the Dutch East India Company and the British East India Company. The British East India Company is the one that England had. Okay, so what is a joint stock company? You can also put this down on your number 5 because you've got a lot of space on number 5 before we go to A. You can put that a joint stock company, it's similar to a present day corporation. People will pool their money in hopes of making a profit. Okay, so in this case, these companies are hoping to make a profit in the Asian trade. Definitely goods are going to be more affordable because, again, Portugal's Asian monopoly got broken. Okay, so goods are definitely more affordable now. You don't want monopolies because they only benefit, the person that is running the monopoly. Well, by the 1600s, the Dutch controlled the Spice Islands, also known as the East Indies. And I gave you the location in case you're wondering, where in the world is this? This is southeast of Asia. I'll pull up the map. So over here, this area is referred to as the Spice Islands. Okay, and that's because a lot of spices were in this particular area. So again, make sure you know that the Dutch controlled that area. Now, when it comes to the two leading commercial centers, which means lots of trade, it's Amsterdam, which is the capital of the Netherlands, and London, which is the capital of England. So those two cities are the leading commercial centers. Now, you need to know why in the world these two cities, of all the cities that are out there in Europe, why these two? It's very simple. Listen before you write it down, and I'll tell you what to write down. In these two cities, they had large populations of Jewish people and those that practice Judaism. And the Jews were known as bankers, and they would loan out money at high interest rates. Well, Christians are completely against this practice of loaning out money at high interest rates. They believe it is sinful, and so therefore any Christian that was caught in that business obviously would be kicked out. So you have the Jews who are heavily populated in both Amsterdam and London, and they are allowed to do business. So that's what you're writing down. The Jewish people were allowed to do business in these two cities as bankers, loaning out money at high interest rates. One more time. The Jewish people were allowed to do business in these two cities as bankers, loaning out money at high interest rates. Okay, so for that reason, these two cities will grow as major commercial centers. All right, and then what I'm gonna have to do is stop the video because it's gonna cut me off if I start talking about the relationship between the Dutch and the Japanese. So this video is ending, and you can pick up with the next one to get this last little bit.